Right, so I have decided to rank Pink Floyd, but I'm going to do the albums that feature Waters, Gilmour, Wright and Mason. And I have Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and I do also have Endless River and the Division Bell, but I have no intention of getting the final cut or a momentary lapse of reason, and I don't think I quite like the Division Bell, but I like Piper at the Gates of Dawn, but it would be very hard to rank them because to a certain extent they don't fit in. Now my start with Pink Floyd was when one night I was listening to John Peel and he played Interstellar Overdrive, and I thought it was just like the most amazing thing, so I bought the album Relics, like a lot of people of my age. This was probably this was the first Pink Floyd album I bought. It was a budget album, which was quite encouraging. And I knew the song See Emily Play. I remember it from hearing it on the radio. I think I might have even seen them do it on Top of the Pops. And I mean, but I must have heard Pink Floyd before I bought the Relics album, because when I heard the song Point Me at the Sky on the radio, I remembered that. I remembered the bit about some of us have to breathe in so others will be able to breathe out at some point in the future. And I managed to should have been on Relics, but I had to buy this early years 67 to 72 compilation pretty much just to get Point Me at the Sky. Although it has got some other good stuff. It's got a live version of Interstellar Overdrive. Now the thing with Relics is that it had Interstellar Overdrive, which was everything I wanted, I think, at the time. It's anarchic. It's like the theme to Steptoe and Son done avant-garde. And apparently it was inspired by Love's My Little Red Book, another song that I really like. But it also has some stuff that you, even once you've collected Pink Floyd, you can't really get. There's the version of Careful with That Axe Eugene, which is certainly not the best version, but it was only a B-side. There's a song called Paint Box, which is very obscure and absolutely brilliant. And there was stuff off their early albums, including Bike from Piper at the Gates of Dawn, which I really liked. And some of these songs that are ranked quite low in other people's Floyd listings, Bike is one. I loved Bike, particularly that weird ending, because at the time that was all really new. And I would probably, given the choice, rather see Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets band than if the others, Gilmour or Waters, came and played in Wickham. But I think Mason covers the Pink Floyd that I like, and I think a lot of it is down to that dreamy tribal tom-tom thing that he does that sort of keeps the more experimental stuff, makes it listenable. Right, yes, there are people who have this at their number one, but I've got it at number 10, which is would be a shock to most people, I should think. I've got Wish You Were Here. Now, I saw Pink Floyd do it on the Dark Side of the Moon tour at Wembley, and they did 3 new songs to start with, and one was Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and the other 2 were Raving and Drooling and You've Got to Be Crazy, which turned up on Animals. And I Shine On You Crazy Diamond was the standout track. However, when I finally got to hear the album, I was totally underwhelmed. I didn't listen to the Floyd albums that came after Wish You Were Here until fairly recently, and I only got Wish You Were Here because I found it in a charity shop for £1. And I listened to it a couple of days ago, and I can confirm it's still bottom of my list. And the song Wish You Were, the song Shine On You Crazy Diamond, I think is brilliant. The actual bit where they're singing, and with the big harmonies and everything, and the guitar solo in the middle, and if that was all it was, I would love that. It'd be one of my favourite Pink Floyd songs. But it's all the other stuff. It doesn't seem to do anything that they don't do somewhere else better. The song Wish You Were Here is okay. I mean, I wouldn't class it as one of my favourite Floyd songs, but I get a bit put off because I do hear it a lot at open mics. And the other problem with it is that it emphasises the fact that I don't really think Pink Floyd had a lead singer. They just had a couple of blokes that could sing. And it's all double tracked in order to compensate for that, which gives it an element of falseness, which on an acoustic song I don't think really works. But mostly I just don't like Have a Cigar and Welcome to the Machine. They're just not songs that I like. I don't like the sound of them. They're a bit noisy. They introduce that sort of funky thing that some sort of clumsy funk that Pink Floyd seem to slip into when they run out of ideas. And Gilmour is not Nile Rodgers. And whoever played the bass, was it Gilmour or Waters? They're certainly not Bootsy Collins. And I think the vocal thing was reinforced by the fact they got Roy Harper to sing on Have a Cigar. And you've got to say hats off to Roy Harper for doing it. I have to say that later, I started to quite like Roger Waters singing when he developed this thing of being like an angry Bob Dylan. I think that works on the angry songs that turn up later. And of course, it was Wish You Were Here was just another one of his things about, his mate who went a bit crazy. And of course, later it's a theme that ran through most of the later Pink Floyd Roger Waters albums. At number 9, I have Ummagumma. Now, I have never owned a copy of Ummagumma, but when I was younger I borrowed a copy and taped it and listened to it quite a lot. Now, I loved the live album, but I'm not sure that counts. And at the time, the three tracks, which are going to be soon available on the Pompeii soundtrack, it was great to hear live versions of them, but they might be a bit redundant. And so it all rests on Astronomy Dominic, which is a brilliant song. I think it might be worth buying Ummagumma just to get the live version of Astronomy Dominic. However, I quite like the Dave Gilmour track, The Narrow Way. It's got some heavy riffing to start and finish, and in the middle is quite a good song, which is fairly similar to the kind of stuff he did on Obscured by Clouds. And when I was a schoolboy, I really liked Grantchester Meadows. I mean, listen to it again, I still quite like it, but I do think that one of the things that appealed to me when I was a schoolboy was the looping bird sound, and I think that's a bit intrusive now. The other track, Several Species of Small Furry Animals Gathered Together in a Cave and Grooving with a Pict. Now, that often comes bottom of the Pink Floyd lists, but you had to be there at the time. That sounded amazing. I loved it. And it was also a rare example of Roger Waters doing something quite funny with that weird Scottish poet. and and the noises, yeah, like I say, it was something we had not heard it before, apart from the end of Bike. Now, I probably only listened a couple of times to the Rick Wright and Nick Mason pieces. I listened to them recently, and what I could say is it just brought back to me the sound of damp squats with bits of old pallet burning in the fireplace and dirty babies crawling on dirty floors, and someone with the Gumma cover on his knees laying out 3 red Rizzlers, licking the side of a Rothman's king size, tearing the wet paper and crumbling tobacco onto the assembled papers, then toasting some hash, crumbling it onto the tobacco, and tearing some card from the lid of the Rothman's packet, and rolling it up to make a roach. Then rolling the joint, twisting the end and lighting it, and passing it around, with the instruction that no one should bogart it. At number 8, we have the soundtrack to the film More. This gets to number 8 above Gumma on the presumption that we don't count the live album, particularly Astronomy Domini. But More actually has some good tracks on it. It has Cirrus Minor and Cymbeline and Green is the Colour. And they do this kind of acoustic thing with washy keyboards. And it has Dave Gilmour plays this sort of like this sparkling thing. He uses a slide on the guitar with lots of echo, and it makes this kind of spacey kind of thing. It's like pre-Hawkwind space rock is what Floyd was sort of known for at the time. But mostly the More soundtrack has the song The Nile Song, and I absolutely love the Nile Song. It might be one of my all-time favourite Pink Floyd tracks, and it's one why Relics would, if I was including compilations, Relics would probably be my number 1 album. The Nile Song is just so heavy, and it's like pre-punk. It's like all the people who comment on punk would like to say that the British punk musicians were inspired by the Stooges. But I don't think they were, because I was sort of one of them. And I think we were inspired by Communication Breakdown, Paranoid, and the Nile Song by Pink Floyd, which we all knew, not because of the More soundtrack, but because we'd all paid £1.50 and bought the Relics album. There's also Ibiza Bar, that's a bit like the Nile Song as well. So the rest of the tracks are very much like a film soundtrack, but half the album is pretty good. At number 7, I have The Wall. Now, I was bored with Floyd by the time this album came out. As I've said, I was disappointed by Wish You Were Here, and I don't think I took much notice of Animals. And I certainly didn't take much notice of The Wall. It was, once again, Roger Waters going on about how hard it is being a rock star and moaning about war. Moaning about war is like shooting fish in a barrel if you're, a 70s person who's into rock music. And so I recently, I think I decided to listen to the album again, because I'd seen the Roger Waters stage thing on television, and I've seen the film a few times, and I find the film quite moving. And particularly the bit in the playground with the little kid wants to go off with the guy's father. And I could have been in The Wall. I could have been in that riot scene, because they were recruiting extras in the pubs around Harrow, and at the time, being in a Pink Floyd film, even with Bob Geldof, was not something that was going to add to my credibility. That, so now listening to The Wall, let's see, I love the in the flesh, the big opening thing, and it occurs at the end, and The Wall was produced by Bob Ezrin, and that does sound like Alice Cooper to me. I also like the ending. There are people who say The Wall would have been a better single album, and I think the bits they would have taken out are the bits that I like. I like that sort of Candour and Ebb thing going on at the end with the trial, and the operatic. Suddenly you get these operatic bits towards the end, and yeah, it's very theatrical. I sort of probably don't feel that I need to listen to Comfortably Numb ever again. I've heard it so many times. You have all these things about the greatest guitar solo ever, and I must admit, when it starts, I think, oh no, and then I get into it. I do think it's a great guitar solo. I remember watching it when they played, was it Live 8? A few other tracks, Mother is good, and Hey You is okay. Bits of it just sound like they're filling out a bit of space, but mostly the thing that put me off was that single. I hated that single, and it was on the radio all the time, and it was on Top of the Pops all the time, and it's got that sort of limp funk thing, only they're trying to make it like a bit disco, and it's got kids on it, and it was Christmas, and I hate Christmas, and yeah. So but now I quite like The Wall, particularly the second half. Number 6, I have Obscured by Clouds. Now, I was tempted to make this even higher, because I really liked this when it came out. And of course it came out before Dark Side of the Moon. The trouble is, once you hear it in comparison to Dark Side of the Moon, it sounds very underproduced and actually not that well played. I think it's got some really good songs on it, and it's got that the Dave Gilmour style of playing that was to become the sort of dad rock that ended Floyd's career, like on the Division Bell. You've got that, only it isn't so formulaic, and it's got the song 3/4, which is a really, on the face of it, it's quite a happy song. The trouble is, when you listen to it at my age, when we were young, we're hearing about the memories of a man in his old age, or the deeds of a man in his prime. It's one thing when you're doing those deeds, but it's another thing when you're listening to it, and those deeds are now the memories. But I'm sure Roger Waters was well aware of that when he wrote it. So, number 5, I have Saucerful of Secrets. Now, the standout moments on Saucerful of Secrets are probably Saucerful of Secrets and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. And once again, I keep saying this, that the soundtrack to Pompeii is coming out soon, and there are very good versions of those songs on the soundtrack. So the opening song, Let There Be More Light, is pretty good, I suppose. And there's Remember a Day, which is another one of those songs which is a really pleasant song, and it's got Gilmour doing his spacey noises on it. I'm not keen on Corporal Clegg and Seesaw. It's sort of like they were trying to carry on from Pipe at the Gates of Dawn, only without any great inspiration. Corporal Clegg is quite an obvious anti-war song, and I'm not sure the kazoo helps. And then of course there is Jug Band Blues, which is absolutely brilliant. But it's a Syd Barrett song. It's the song it's probably the song that stands out most, but it is the song that is most out of place. So number 4, I have Dark Side of the Moon. Which, strangely enough, is the only one I don't have on CD, or apart from Relics, but I do have it on vinyl. So this is another occasion, I was listening to John Peel, and he said he was going to play a track from the new Pink Floyd album. And as a bit of a Pink Floyd fan at the time, I had my cassette player ready to go. I pressed play and record, and it was Us and Them. And I wasn't at all impressed. It just sounded like the Moody Blues to me. And I played it over and over again, trying to get into it. Couldn't really get into it. And so I thought, well, you know, I'll give the album a go anyway. And I'd probably heard a lot of the album before I bought a copy. And I think at the time, I did like it. At the time, lines about holding on in quiet desperation is the English way. To a schoolboy, that's pretty good. Yeah, we would have been quoting that line, and as we were having our break. And obviously, money, the way it changed keys, changed time signature, and we would have been quite impressed with that, because we were sort of impressed by that kind of thing. But then I did not listen to it for years, because I'd heard it so much. I'd played my own copy. We had a common room record player, and it was played on the common room record player. It was played on the radio. You'd see film of Pink Floyd, and they'd always play Time and Breathe, and I'd hear those played at open mic nights and jams. And even though I like Radiohead, I started to find Time and Breathe, as I got older, depressing. And so it was only fairly recently that I played the vinyl, and the bits that aren't Us and Them, Time and Breathe, I actually really like. I mean, particularly like a Great Gig in the Sky and the ending, Brain Damage and Eclipse. It's hard for me to have a strict opinion on this, because it's like, it's like Stairway to Heaven. I never want to hear Stairway to Heaven again, and I don't really want to hear Time and Breathe and Us and Them ever again. But yes, it is a good album, and overall I do like it. At number 3, I have Animals. And I'm even shocked that I have Animals at number 3. It keeps going up in my estimation. It was only a few years ago that I finally bought a copy of Animals. And the first time I played it, I can't say that I disliked it. And I'd had the Echoes compilation, so I was quite, I had played the track Sheep quite a lot. And Sheep has got all the things that Floyd do that I like the most. It's got that dung da 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 dung bass line, and it's got Gilmour doing it's sort of like a more elaborate version of One of These Days, and that choppy guitar when that comes in, I absolutely love that. So at first that was my entry point into Animals, but now I really like Dogs. And I heard people were putting the album number 1, and then people were saying Dogs is Floyd's best track, and it took me a while to hear it, but I do. I like the anger. I like the anger on sheep, but I like the anger on dogs and the desolate lyrics. But mostly, I like the orchestrated guitars. It's not just Gilmour doing that melodic solo that goes on and on. These are worked out like fanfares. Yeah, it is becoming one of my favourite albums. All the Pig stuff, it is okay. The acoustic songs are okay, and the Three Different Kinds track, I can get a bit annoyed with the fact that I don't particularly like the line "Charade you are," but it really gets stuck in my head every time I hear it, and I think the fact that it gets stuck in my head makes me dislike it even more. But on the whole, yes, Animals is number 3 at the moment, but if I did this in a year's time, Animals might be number 1. So number 2 is Atom Heart Mother. I remember having this album, having Atom Heart Mother, while I think I was revising for my A-levels, and there was just something about it that you could put it on, and I got to know it so well that it didn't disturb me, but it kept the world away. And I think that the actual Atom Heart Mother track is one of my all-time favourite Pink Floyd tracks, and even Pink Floyd now say that they don't like it, but what's not to like? You know, it's got trains and motorbikes, it's got choirs singing nonsense words, it's got a brilliant riff, and other than, once again, there is the kind of funky bit, but it builds nicely, and it just, I first time I heard it, I thought, do I like this? I think I do. And then I listened to it more and more. The more and more I listened to it, the more I knew I liked it. And the tracks on the other side, the trouble is that I was so keen on the Atom Heart Mother track, I didn't pay an awful lot of attention to the other side, because I was more interested in the psychedelic stuff and the experimental stuff, and not so much the acoustic tracks. In fact, I probably listened more to Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which is the last track, which is, I think, the worst track on the album. It's a bit meandering, and it's like some instrumentals with apparently a roadie cooking his breakfast. The other 3 tracks I think are really good. The Fat Old Son, the Dave Gilmour track, it's a lovely tune. I think I read recently, I think he's revised that he now agrees that it's good. The If song, Roger Waters, that's a great song. I can't, it's taken me maybe to become mature to realise what a good song If was. But I think what made me realise it was quite good was when one of the things I watch quite often is the the Nick Mason Saucer Full of Secrets on Sky, and they did I think it's a medley of If and Atom Heart Mother, and because If was part of Atom Heart Mother, it made me listen to it properly, and it's really good. And the Rick Wright song Summer of '68 is much better now than I remembered it. I don't remember much about it, and I listen to it now. The thing I like is it's like Pink Floyd saying goodbye to psychedelia. It is like the last of their psychedelic tracks. So at number 1, obviously, I have Medal. I had already seen the Live at Pompeii film. I went to see it with a friend. We went to an art house cinema in Bloomsbury. So I'd already seen it before I bought the album Medal. So I had heard Echoes once. admittedly chopped up. But I think I sat down and listened to it, and I probably played it and played it and played it, and I can't really explain why it is I love it. There was a thing at the time, people tried to do like side long epics, and often they were just medleys of songs, you know, not necessarily matching up, but Echoes, it's like the structure of the song is quite long, and so it's I think the structure is like verse chorus with an instrumental in the middle, and it takes up like 24 minutes or something. But it's just it needs to be that long. It's not like it should be any shorter. And when I went to see them at Wembley doing the Dark Side of the Moon tour, I must admit, yeah, I sat through Dark Side of the Moon. By the time I'd seen them, I knew every note. But I knew they were going to do Echoes as an encore. And the bit in Echoes where the jangling guitar comes in, the jangling guitar playing arpeggios, in my mind, I'm sure they had a mirror ball, like in a cassette, in a, you know, dance floor, and that was just magic. That was a magic moment in my rock and roll consumption. It's up there with Bruce going 1, 2, 3, 4, the highway's jammed with broken heroes. And before I bought the album, I heard John Peel played Fearless, which he played because he's a Liverpool fan and it's got the Cop Choir on it. And just hearing Fearless put the Medal album on my shopping list, and then the Old Grey Whistle Test a few times played this film. It's like a cartoon film of these cartoon figures running and dancing to the song One of These Days. It's a song, it's an instrumental, and it would probably be number 3 on my list of Pink Floyd favourite songs. Echoes was probably 1 and Atom Heart Mother number 2. In fact, I actually, during the period where I wasn't particularly into Pink Floyd, I did make a cassette up which had Echoes on one side and Atom Heart Mother on the other. And during my car driving years, where that was my job, I listened to that cassette a lot. So, oh yes, I probably should mention the other 3 tracks. Pillar of Winds is okay. And what else have we got? Yes, Saint-Tropez. I could skip Saint-Tropez. And of course the one that everybody thinks brings this album down is the one with the singing dog, the blues with a dog on it. But once again, if you've seen the Pompeii film before you listen to the album or you buy the album, the singing dog is sort of in context. It's in the film. It's a light moment, and you know, dare I say it? It's like Pink Floyd's idea of a comedy moment, perhaps. So that's it. That's my ranking of the Gilmour, Wright, Waters, Mason, Pink Floyd albums.